One of the things we don't like about social media is that most people just go there and passively consume. You kind of feel like you're socializing, but you're not actually really exchanging in any way. It's most important how it makes you feel when you put the phone down.
Hello， 大家好，我是小王飞体。今天我有一个非常特别的机会，可以跟两位 Retro 的创办人一起来聊 Retro 社群媒体，还有非常多我个人都很好奇的问题。那我们就废话不多说，让我们欢迎 Nathan 还有 Ryan。
So I'm Nathan Sharp. I'm one of the co-founders of Retro. I'm visiting Taipei from San Francisco.
And I'm Ryan, co-founder of Retro, and I'm just so excited to be here in Taiwan and Taipei. It's been amazing so far.
Can you introduce Retro to those who haven't heard of it or tried it before?
Sure. So Retro is a new type of social media app. Ryan and I used to work on Instagram together, and we've seen social media evolve in lots of different ways, and we wanted to build an app that does three things. Number one, it actually brings you closer to your friends. Number two, it helps you document and appreciate your own life. And number three, it does that without hijacking your time and attention. So if you use Retro, you'll notice it's just kind of a beautifully designed photo journal where every single week you choose your favorite memories from the photos you've already taken from your camera roll. You choose those, you add some friends, and the only people that can see your photos are the friends that you've added. So it's just a really private, aesthetic way to share your life with your friends and reflect on all the moments that were most important to you.
Because a lot of my friends are also using Retro, so I interviewed many of them. And I found an interesting insight is that the way you introduce Retro and the way you build it and how you like about it is also similar to how they really like it. So they like it to use it as a recap, as like a weekly recap or monthly recap, and like stay in touch with those close friends. So I find it really interesting. So it just aligns like kind of perfectly. You two have worked at Instagram before. I know that you have always wanted to build something together, right?
Yeah.
So did the idea of Retro comes up like in a click, so like we have to do this like new types of social media, or like you did a lot of discussion and that creates Retro?
Yeah, I think so. Our journey started together. We built Instagram stories together. Nathan was the product manager and I was the main iOS engineer building that product. And when we created that, we had this moment where we had this very comfortable space to share what was going on in our lives through photos. And it was this awesome moment to kind of reconnect with friends maybe we hadn't seen updates from recently, and just get this window into their lives. I think as time went on through Instagram, the product went more towards entertainment, more towards influencers, ads. And so we started to really miss that. And around the time that we left, we were feeling like it was time. It was time for a new social media. And so that's why we created Retro.
Do you know at the very first beginning, it's like you have to recreate those experiences? Is that because the aesthetic and the user interface of Retro is like so straightforward, simple, and beautiful? Does it like you have an image in your head and just, oh, this should be how it should be, or like you did many revisions on the user interface?
Yeah, it's a good question. I would say that Retro didn't come to us like a lightning bolt. I think it was a lot of the experiences that Ryan mentioned and a lot of the insights that we had gathered almost 10 years from the launch of Stories now. And where we really started was that there are things that are amazing about social media. Like if you think about it, it's kind of a miracle that you have a camera in your pocket that you can take wherever you go in life and capture and remember these things, and that you can keep a huge group of friends, or not even a huge group of friends, but a much bigger group of friends than you could keep updated in just your physical life or on text message, updated on what you're doing. And so we asked ourselves, like, what's awesome about social media and what really bugs us and annoys us and what feels kind of addictive and bad. And so, over time, as we asked ourselves that, we said, what is the way that we like using social media? And we liked it best when it wasn't kind of a performance or you posting for likes or anything. We liked it best when it felt like you were capturing moments almost as if you were journaling for yourself, first and foremost. And so as we built Retro, we really kind of riffed on that idea of a photo journal or a photo diary. And if you think about it, the moments that you want to remember for yourself are also the moments that are best for updating your friends on what's important to you. So when we built Retro, we wanted to build it around this idea of the week. So we knew that people oftentimes didn't share a photo every single day, but they do every week. And we also felt that if you aren't capturing a photo or video that you want to remember for yourself or share with your friends every week, then you should probably try harder. Because like life is full of experiences that you should appreciate, and if you aren't looking hard enough, you might just miss them.
Oh, I'm actually a daily retro user.
Amazing.
Yeah. So I think retro gives me a habit. So like if something happens interesting, I will have a habit to take out my phone and take a picture no matter what it is. I think it does offer an opportunity for us to cherish moments.
One of the favorite things that we've heard from people who start using retro is that it inspires them to take more photos, and they feel like they've appreciated their own life more. We were talking to some users yesterday, and one of them mentioned he went through like a difficult time in his life, and he felt like being able to look back on his memories in retro really helped him through that time, and that was just like so heartwarming to hear.
The profile page, you can scroll through and you can just see like what happens each week and what interesting have happened like a year ago, 2 years ago, and even with the new shuffle feature, and that's also very cool. How did you come up with the name retro?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think whenever you start an app, you have an idea of what the experience is going to be, and then you kind of back into appropriate names. I think retro kept coming up because we really were inspired by some of those original magical experiences in social media many years ago. It's a throwback to a simpler time, you're building your life's retrospective, and you can share retroactively. It just made a lot of sense.
I personally really appreciate how simple retro is today, because like there's only feature that it has to be like posting and like and comments, and not too pressurized to like do the reactions, and we cannot see if our friends check them. You just launched a new feature, right?
Yeah.
The sticker is capped, because I interview people and they keep sending messages saying how they like this feature. How simple retro is today is rare in today's, no matter it's social media or in apps. How did you decide when to add a new feature?
It's always a challenge. It's actually much harder to build a simple product than it is to build a complicated product. And so a lot of what we do is to really distill down to like what is the essence of this thing, what is the most important parts of it. I think that we've been really lucky to work with some very talented product designers that have made that beautiful aesthetic of retro and really keep it simple and focused on its core. One of the ideas that we have is that like all of the color in the interface should come from photos. So that's why we have this kind of black and white for all of the text and the Chrome, the buttons. And so it's like all of the pop is from the people that you know, what they're doing, the photos that they're sharing. Earlier in my time at Instagram, actually, we went through a redesign of the app, and we did something similar where it used to be like a very colorful bars and buttons. We kind of took all the color out of that because for these apps, I think the focus should always be on the photos and on the people that you care about.
The most recent feature is something called sticker recaps. We really love that as a way to kind of reflect on like what was so fun about this last month, and it's a new way of kind of like romanticizing it or just making it super aesthetic or fun, and it gets you excited about your own life. It makes your own life like look so fun and so interesting, and it allows you to then like hopefully share it back out because you're so proud of what you've created, which then kind of starts this virtuous cycle of other friends seeing it and being excited to share themselves.
Wow, it's amazing.
Yeah.
And I find the sticker feature is like, it's so intuitive that you don't have like, there's no tutorials that you just drag and you can like adjust the layers and just works perfectly. Yeah.
Ryan mentioned that we have some designers and engineers on our team that are just like so good and just like nailed it. We're really lucky to work with them.
Yeah, that's how an app should be. Yeah. If new features keep adding, getting more complicated, and people hard to understand the new features, like is this a concern for you?
Yeah, every day we brainstorm new features to add. We are always asking, does this overcomplicate the product? I think the thing we do to ground ourselves and keep it simple is we know exactly what we want this app to be. And what that means is that you also know exactly what the app shouldn't be. I talked earlier about how we want it to be something that keeps you close to friends, and how it should be something that helps you document and appreciate your own life. And so if in the ideas that we're throwing around, if it really helps it be the perfect app to do either one of those two, we go a little bit further with it and figure out whether that's the best way to do that. And if it falls outside of those two, we say maybe that's a good idea and maybe that's good for people, but that's another app. So, for example, sometimes people ask us, like, oh man, there's no public feed in Retro. There's no explore page. But for us, the world already has so many different entertainment apps where you can connect with creators. And maybe there is something we can do in the future to offer a better experience for that in a separate app. But that's not Retro. Retro's about friends. All the other apps are about entertainment. Retro is just about those two things.
How many people are using Retro today?
It's over 1.2 million people across the world are using Retro today.
Wow.
And that's a good number for a social app. We always want to be like 100x of that. Like ultimately we think this idea of connecting with your friends is a pretty universal use case. We think that a lot of people, almost every single person you talk to, can identify 2, 3, 4 friends that they would like to know more about and that they would like those friends to know more about their own life. And so we think if we can nail this experience and build that network, we can probably hopefully get to like 1 billion friends connected. We want to do something that has cultural impact at scale. I think the ultimate goal is to be the default way that people share photo updates with each other. But those are about like top level user growth numbers. I think the things that are even more important to us than those numbers in these early stages of the company are things like engagement and retention. And so one thing that we think about a lot is that, I said we talked about what we do and don't like about social media. One of the things we don't like about social media is that most people just go there and passively consume. And that's bad for multiple reasons, but it's really bad because it means that you're not kind of actively contributing to a community at all. And that ultimately that act isolates you more because you get this, you kind of feel like you're socializing because you're watching other people talk, you might be commenting, you might be liking, but you're not actually really exchanging in any real way. So in terms of like the metric that we're most proud of, it's something called daily active participation, the number of daily active users who actually post a photo or a video. And with most other social media, those are kind of single-digit numbers usually. But for Retro, almost half of all daily active users post a photo or a video. And what we're most excited about is that that's coming from a lot of people that don't typically post elsewhere or have stopped posting entirely, kind of introverted people. But Retro kind of is comfortable enough where they feel like they can participate.
I think one of our goals in setting out was to make an app that was as much about creating and sharing as it was about consuming. And so we tried to set up the system to make it as comfortable as possible to share and just make it as easy, as low friction as we could. In Taiwan alone, we average 1 million photos a day posted. And so it's really, really exciting to be here and see how people are using the app.
During the process for building Retro or like starting your own company, is there a part you to enjoy the most? And as the scale of team starts getting bigger, are you still able to keep doing the things that you like the most?
Yeah, I mean, I think Ryan and I both come from like a product background. Inside of Instagram, we work together on products. And so it's always so amazing to kind of brainstorm, design an idea, and then prototype it and feel it in the app itself. And so I think on any one day, that's one thing that we're like both super excited about and comfortable with. I think one thing that has gotten me more excited over time though is that building the app, as hard as it is, the harder part is connecting with people and seeing it grow. So like the thing that I've come to enjoy on the other side of that is just figuring out how to get the story, how to tell the story of Retro. Just how to explain it to people and why it's different and why it's new and why out of all the apps that you should download this year, this is like the one if you just download one. And so we've put together a marketing team that we're really excited about that helps us tell that story. And I think for me, telling that story, seeing how users receive it, talking to users is one of the things I enjoy most now.
Yeah, one of the cool things, hard things, but cool things about doing a startup is you have to do everything. When you work in a big company, you focus on one area and there's many other people that handle everything else. So when we started, it was just Nathan and I, and you just have to do it all. But it's also amazing. You get so much variety. You get exposed to so many experiences. We get to come to Taiwan and we get to talk to amazing people. So yeah, it's been really cool.
Before Retro started gaining traction or attention around the world, do you have like any setbacks or hard moments that you can recall and how you overcome them?
Yeah, one of the hardest things in starting a new social app is not actually building the app itself, but building the network and getting people to find their friends on the app and growing it. And so the first, about year that Retro was out, we had a good core set of people using the app, but it wasn't growing rapidly. And so we were learning ways to how do we tell our story, how do we get people excited about this app, and then Taiwan was one of the first places that it really clicked, and people discovered the app, they shared it with their friends, they got their friends on it, and it was so awesome to see that moment happen because it was proof that when this thing does work, it really works, and it becomes something that's like a meaningful part of people's lives.
Was there a moment like you feel like, oh, this might fail, or like, oh, we did it? Is there like some moment?
Well, I mean, as Ryan said, in the first year, you would see little growth spurts, but it also, like, we want to become a billion-person app. And whenever you have less than 100,000 users, you're like, is it ever going to get there at all? And so it was hard. You have to like really kind of remind yourself about why you're doing this and what's at stake. I think for us, we feel like there's a version of the future that could be better. And if we don't chip away at this, there's not a ton of people like really trying to innovate in this consumer social space anymore. And so during those times, whenever growth was somewhat slow early on, you just have to remind yourself of that. And that's how you kind of pull yourself together and get up in the morning and go at it really hard.
Yeah, I think a big change for starting your own company is becoming really comfortable with the uncertainty. Like, you don't know how this is going to play out. You don't know if it's going to work. Probably the odds are that it will fail, but you just have to become comfortable with that. And I think if you come back to a mission that you really care about, it makes it much easier. It feels like you're working on something meaningful. Even if it fails, it was worth trying.
Yeah. On this trip, we've talked to a lot of young founders or people that are thinking about going to entrepreneurship. And that's like one of our most important pieces of advice is like, be really make sure that what you're doing, you're really behind it in terms of the mission. Because almost certainly it's going to be 10 times harder and take 10 times more time than you expect. And so if you're not really excited about the mission of it, you're going to lose steam and energy really quickly. And your life is probably going to be like more miserable than it should be if you're trying to just build an app that you don't care about.
So the intention is super important.
Exactly.
So you two kind of like in the core team of Instagram stories, even though you left the team, but the user keeps growing. Have you ever imagined that so many people will using this app or using this feature every single day? And how does it feel like? Or even like Retro, like so many people are using it nowadays.
Yeah, one of the magical experiences when you build something like that is just being out in the world and being on the train and looking over someone's shoulder and seeing them use the thing that you made, and it's wild. It's like, oh, I built that.
Would you come and talk to them?
Yeah, usually I don't. I try not to be creepy. I feel like even when I'm looking over their shoulder, I feel a little creepy. But yeah, so it is really cool to work on products that achieve that kind of scale, definitely. And yeah, I think, with Instagram stories, Instagram was already a pretty significant app at that time, but it has been a pretty impressive growth trajectory. It's just continued to become so big in the world. But yeah, we think it's time for something new, and so we hope that Retro gets there as well.
Do you still use social media?
That's a good question. So I still use it. I've tried to pare back, and Retro has really allowed me to spend way less time on most social media. It felt like staying connected with the friends on some of these apps was the final thing that was like pulling me back in. And when we started working on Retro, I don't feel that same pull that I used to, because I get all the connection I want from my friends on Retro, and therefore like I really just use like Instagram for kind of inspiration and Twitter for news.
Yeah, for me, I would say phone addiction was like a real issue for me. And I just felt myself being, sucked into these apps, and then an hour would go by and I'd kind of surface and just wonder what happened, like where did that time go? And so retro has really helped me cut that out. I still have Instagram. I still occasionally look at it, and it's nice to be able to like go into it and not feel like I need to be into it, be able to exit quickly. And so I use a lot less social media, and I think having an alternative that kind of serves the purpose that I want from social media is really helpful versus, you know, an app that maybe has a lot of motives. You want to come in to catch up with friends, but then it steers you into something else as well.
Yeah, I think there is a core difference between like retro and social media nowadays is that there's 98% of revenue of Meta comes from the ads. So like there's literally no reason or no incentive for them to like decrease people's screen time. Or the business model of retro today is like it's transparent and you can support if you want. And there's no ads, no algorithms, and no other content rather than your friends. So yeah, I think this experience is exactly how social media should be, because like social media is not social anymore.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
There is something to say about the business model, which is that we think subscription models are a great way to align the team that's building the product with the intentions and the goals of the end user. Like, we're just trying to build something that our users find useful enough that they're willing to pay for. But there, you know, between the free version and the paid version, it's super important, I think, that people know that you don't actually have to spend money to get the premium version, that you can help us build the network. So if you bring 5 friends with you to Retro, you can get a free year. And then if you bring 10 friends, which is awesome, and actually not that hard to do, if you really put your mind to it, you can get a free lifetime subscription to Retro. So you'll always have Retro Premium.
But like my friend already using them, A lot of my friends have mentioned that they may aware that they spend way too much time on, for example, short form videos or those feeds, but like it's really hard for them to make the decision to like quit social media. I think there's like too many things to consider, like the fear of missing out and my friends on it, like everybody's using it and why I'm not using it and blah, blah, blah. So as a former creator of Instagram, the word, and someone who is building a new social media, do you think people should keep using those social apps, or they should be more intentional about it?
I mean, I definitely think they should be more intentional about it. I think they should ask themselves, how does this app make me feel as I'm using it? And more importantly, I think, how does it make me feel when I put the phone down? Like, are you glad you just spent that time on the app or not? Because if you just ask yourself, like, how do I feel when I'm using it? It's actually very funny. I mean, the problem with short form content isn't that it's like bad or boring. It's that it's actually so engaging that it's hard to like take your eyes away from it. But the problem is that when you put the phone down, you realize that, you know, you should have been present with your kids, or you should have been studying for your midterms, or you should have been out exercising, or just you should have been coordinating like a meetup with your friends so you can actually see your friends in real life, and you feel worse as a result of it. I think for Retro, one of the things we've said a lot of times is that it's most important how it makes you feel when you put the phone down. And I mean, we talked earlier before starting this discussion about, you know, asking you questions, and I would kind of flip that around to you to say, how does Retro make you feel when you put the phone down?
Wow. When I first quit social media and like I was worried about I would like disconnect it with my friends because all my friends are using it and they're posting their interesting life, travels and foods, etc. But as time goes by, I realized that those friends who were really connected with me are all on Retro, and we will still see each other, we'll have meals together, we can make a phone call, we can chat. And because we are in different cities or different college, and we rarely have the chance to meet in person. Social media used to offer a softer connection, but today's social apps, it's just become too noisy and too complicated. So like Retro just offers a perfect space to keep this lightweight connection. I can just make sure that they are still alive, or what they are worried about, what they are eating today, or what they are studying, or So I think it's offered a great experience. And even if like your friends post 100 photos per day and you just finish it and you're done, there's nothing else to spend more time on it. So the overall experience is pretty good.
Cool, good.
One of the things that we say is that we never want to be a substitute for actually going and meeting up with your friends and seeing them in person. There's no substitute for that. No digital product is ever going to match that. And so it's for the times in between when you want to, stay up to date on somebody that maybe you don't see every day or every week, so that when you do see them, you have a conversation starter. You know what's going on in their life, and it just makes that connection easier to spark back up.
Yeah, it feels like when you meet up in real life, you can just pick right up where you left off, because you've both kept each other updated on what's important to you in your life in the in-between times.
Yeah, I think like Gen Z in our generation is like a big part of the retro user, right?
Yeah.
How do you think about Gen Z and social media today? And is there anything you hope for our generation to move towards?
Yeah. I mean, I don't think this is necessarily just unique to Gen Z. I would give this advice to anybody, but think about the apps that you use as if they're tools and if they're serving you, and ask yourself like what you're really trying to get from the apps that you open up frequently. If you use Uber, I think it's very obvious what you're trying to get from that. But for apps like Instagram or potentially Retro, it's a little bit less clear. So you got to ask yourself, what do you want to get from this? And so if you find that the apps are not serving you in the way you want to, you should drop them. So if you're turning to Instagram so that you can be inspired, and you're not being inspired. If you're turning to Instagram to connect with friends, but you find that you're engaging with content from strangers more than friends, it's probably not serving the goal that you set out to use the app. With Retro, if you're trying to stay close to friends, ask yourself, is it actually serving me? Am I staying close with friends? And honestly, that's our challenge. If it's not, then you should drop Retro too, if it's not serving you. So I would encourage everybody to think deeply about what they're trying to get out of their apps, and if it maps to their priorities and their goals, so that they use their time really wisely.
I'm really encouraged by when I talk to the younger generation. It does feel like people are becoming much more aware, and they're thinking about these things. And so while it is hard to maybe get off of these platforms, they're becoming more intentional about it. And so I think like we've gone through this period where some of these things were new, and so they kind of just took us by surprise when we weren't thinking about what they were doing to our lives. But I think now young people are becoming just more thoughtful about like whether these things fit into their life and what they're doing for them. And so I'm optimistic that we'll go to a better place.
Wow, that's awesome. Yeah, so we have talked about Retro and your experiences and social media. Now I'm curious about like how your life looks like. So how does your typical day looks like as like two founders? Like, do you still do a lot of meetings or doing a lot of coding stuff? Yeah, so how does it look like?
Yeah. Well, I think everybody in the company focuses on a pretty specific function. And then, so you're either working on coding, design, marketing, administration, operations. And throughout the week, different challenges will pop up. I would say in a typical week, we all, at the beginning of the month, decide what features we should be building. So our designers and engineers are chipping away at that. We try to keep the company Lone Palm Labs, which is the name of the company that is building Retro. It's a small team of less than 10 people. We try to keep meetings to a minimum. We wanted to build a company where it felt like it was a joy to work there, and that you get energy out of it, and that your day is spent mostly working on things that will directly impact your users in a positive way. So we do have one meeting usually among the people working on the product at about midday Pacific time. We will have a few meetings every day, but for the most part, I think that we're all kind of working directly with projects that affect users.
One of our goals in starting the company was to create an environment where we could work the way we wanted to work. And I think a big part of that for us is having large stretches of time to just do the deep work. So we don't want to chop that up with a bunch of meetings and have a lot of overhead. Like, most people should be able to spend most of their time doing their kind of like core thing, whether that's building product, designing product, or figuring out how to tell the story of the product.
As artificial intelligence getting better and better, As a computer science student, I'm really curious, like, do you have any advice for people who are still doing like programming or learning?
Yeah, we say it's never been a better time to be a builder because the tools have become so powerful. You can do so much on your own. And it was true a little bit in the beginning of when we were creating Retro. I had never done much server engineering, and I was having to build the server side for Retro. And the models at that time were like just becoming like helpful. You know, they could do some tab completion, but it actually did help me quite a bit. But now, I mean, yeah, you can be a single person and you can create the entire product, the back end, iOS, Android, and so yeah, I think if you learn the tools of your time and become a master of them, like it's never been easier, which is awesome. I think a flip side to the AI stuff is like in Retro itself, we want it to always be about the humans, and so while we love these AI tools, we don't want it to just be kind of a place for machines. It should always tie back to the human experience, and I think that's the thing that we care most about are the people.
Yeah, that's also something that gives us some confidence in our path forward for Retro, because even as it becomes easier and easier to build different apps, the thing that becomes more rare and scarce is the human choice to take a photo, the human choice to add a friend, the human choice to share that photo with that friend. And there's not a lot that AI can do to really improve that experience. That I don't really care about the content of a photo because I know that a person had an AI assistant like help them choose that photo. I care that they chose that themselves. And so I think that we're pretty excited about building a network. We were excited about building a network in the beginning for humans, but as time has gone by, we realized that that's even more important. And that's probably going to be even more rare and difficult to build in the future is a network of actual friends that are sharing with each other.
Nathan, you mentioned a phrase about like time moves so fast, and if we don't cherish the present, like we wake up and we are 80. Yeah. I'm wondering like if this thought have changes as your identity changes. For example, like becoming a dad or having daughters, and is this philosophy integrates or can be seen in Retro?
Yeah, I mean, for me personally, like certainly, I think that having a child, what it does to you is you look at this little baby and it changes so much, like on a day-to-day and a week-to-week and a month-to-month basis, that if you don't take a moment and like really pay attention to it and create a snapshot in your mind or create a snapshot as a picture, you might actually miss out on like a big period of development and a big period of change. And so Retro helps me, for example, kind of like watch and observe those changes over time. And it does a good job of like resurfacing these memories from the past, whether it's like in the rewind tab where it's like this week, 6 years ago, which I really love. Or there's a widget where you can have your own memories surface kind of randomly, and it pulls me back into those places, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like I can't believe how old my daughter is now and how she talks so differently now and walks and holds herself so differently. So I think, yeah, certainly this idea of a weekly journal has allowed me to more closely watch the passage of time and appreciate how fast it moves and how much things can change in just a short period.
Yeah, I think Retro also encourages to cherish the moments more, because when something happens, we have to like intentionally to value what currently is happening, and like Retro kind of encourages to not only like enjoys the moment but also captures it, so like we have the opportunity to look back in the future. Yeah, so it's like a cool habit that Retro encourages.
Yeah. I mean, habits can be good or bad habits. A lot of times we talk about Retro in terms of creating a ritual. We want people to create a ritual that they savor, like every time they kind of recap memories on a daily, weekly, or a monthly basis.
I think many of you are watching this conversation is probably around the same age as mine. Me personally, I feel like Many times I feel kind of lost, like I don't know what should I do in the future, or should I keep studying CS, or should I, like, there are too many things to worry about. So do you still remember when you were at your 20s, do you like also have the similar feelings?
Definitely, yeah, definitely, yeah. So I didn't even start in university in computer engineering. It was something I transferred into after a few years, and when I was first starting to work in programming and building apps, I was working on iOS, and Android had just come out, and it seemed like Android might just take over the world, and I was worried, am I building these skills that are not going to be relevant anymore? I think with some time and perspective, I guess the advice I would give back to my former self is to relax a little bit, which is easier said than done. But I think, yeah, if you focus on building your skills, focus on just learning how to solve problems, make things that are useful to other people, I think you'll continue to do well. I think you don't have to be so focused on like making the exact right choice at any one time. I think like the path will kind of unfold, and it can work out.
How about Nathan?
Yeah. I mean, what I would say on that front is think about the next year, the next 5 years, the next 10 years, but don't get so caught up in the next 10 years, because it's really difficult to take that first step if you're so concerned about where life is going to be in 10 years. Where I can tell you for sure is in 10 years, humans are still going to be using AI as a tool to solve problems for other humans. And so I think what's probably most important is that in your early days, you get broad exposure to a lot of the hard skills. So like, go deep on math, go deep on science, go deep on computer science, because whether you're doing any of that directly or with the assistance of an AI, you're gonna be much more capable of managing an AI if you know those things really well. And the way I would say, like, there may be a world, I mean, we don't know where things are gonna go in 10 years, and so it's probably going to be dramatically different. But I think one way to like not get so caught up in it is to ask yourself, what would you do if you had a genius assistant, or like multiple genius assistants with you at any time to help you do something? What would you do at that point? And your answer to that question probably is going to come back to things that you're really interested in, that you're curious about, that you think are going to have impact in. And just start from that place and study and go into those things.
If there is opportunity that you can like go back and talk to your 20-year-old self, is there anything you'd like to tell him?
Ryan said this a little bit earlier, but I would say probably relax a little bit. I mean, I remember being in your shoes and being so concerned that each one of these decisions was going to have some sort of like cosmic impact either way. Big changes are going to occur. They already are occurring, but you're going to have some time to shift into different things. I remember seeing like my first iPhone like in 2007. I graduated college in 2008. I had no idea that I'd be working on trying to build companies that launch iPhone apps and Android apps in the future. I hadn't even seen an Android device at that point. But you'll have time to adapt to a lot of these changes. And even if you don't, it's still helpful to believe that you have time to adapt and just operate in that mode. Because if you're operating under this sense of like panic and urgency, you're probably going to just psych yourself out, and you're going to be less productive, less happy. You're probably going to retain less, and so relax a little.
Yeah, I think it probably sounds cliche, but like just appreciating the journey, and appreciating the process of learning these things, and that's been something that I think as time has gone on for me, I've gained more appreciation for, and appreciating the things that you have. I mean, it's something we want Retro to help you do as well, as to appreciate your own life. I think it can be easy to get too focused on like chasing after something, and you can forget like how great things are in your life, your relationships, and all of that. So, yeah.
Wow, that's amazing.
I think the only final thing I would add, and this is advice that we've talked to other kind of students and early entrepreneurs about, is that you should approach life as if you're going through seasons. There's a season to to learn, there's a season to make money, there's a season to be conservative, there's a season to take risks on something that's really important to you. And I think it's that last part you have to always remember that, if you go into something and you get into a situation that's comfortable, you gotta at some point ask yourself, like, what kind of risk do I want to take to make sure that the future is moving in a direction I want it to? Because you can go through life and get kind of old without taking real risks on making something better. And at the end of it, when you're 80 or so, you want to have built something that you're proud to look back on. And so there's no shame in like trying to develop some savings before taking a risk, or develop skills before taking a risk. But just make sure that you're constantly asking yourself, like, what's worthy of risk, and then taking that on a little bit later. And we've talked a lot about retro, and it sounds like it's resonating with you. We obviously like using it ourselves, but we still see ourselves in the early days, and it's by no means perfect at all. So for anybody watching that uses the app, like, let us know how we can make it better. If this idea of a social media app that can make you feel good, one that brings you closer to friends, helps you appreciate your own life, resonates with you, then the best thing that you can do is kind of help out with people that also have a like-minded approach. And hopefully, this time, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, we find ourselves in a much better situation in terms of phone addiction, closeness to friends, people actually like meeting up in real life.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah.
Cool, thank you for having us, we appreciate it.
Yeah. It's a great conversation. Thanks.
Symptoms from your broken pride, the scratches in